a voice rising from the darkness of the night to the light, every beat a nightmare, every word a cry. He knew when his own death would be, but fate unexpectedly met him at the age of 21 in a more terrible way than the tragedy he had predicted for himself. This was not a simple death. This was the end of a terrible mystery. The music world had never seen such a talent. A young genius with dark eyes, a heart full of pain, but a mind infinitely creative. His name was Jarad Higgins, but the world knew him as Juice WRLD. He closed his eyes to life at the age of 21. For some, it was just a drug overdose. But for those who knew, it was the end of a bigger story, an unfulfilled prediction. It was an ending he predicted in his own words. His story begins in the life of a small child. Jarad grew up with his mother's words, religious and tired of life. His mother considered every music he listened to be the work of the devil, and even changed the channel when he watched rap music on TV. The first trauma that left a deep mark on Jarad's memory occurred when he was only 4 years old. His grandmother gave him a small pill called Xanax to calm him down. Little Jarad did not know that this small pill would be the beginning of the biggest nightmare of his future life. This opened a hole in his psyche, awakening his faith in drugs. He learned that this small pill calmed him down, relieved pain. This was the first seed of his addiction to drugs. As a child, his best friend was video games, especially Guitar Hero. He memorized the notes of songs and practiced playing them on the guitar he picked up. These were the first sprouts of his love for music. However, the real turning point came after he was introduced to rap music. Artists like Tupac, Eminem, 50 Cent sounded more familiar to his ears. Their words filled the void inside Jarad, expressing the pain in his soul. Each of them was a rap artist who stood on the edge of society and expressed his pain. Jarad found himself in these artists. During his teenage years, Jarad embraced both his music and his addictions. He wrote hundreds of freestyle songs in his room alone. His voice, music, and lyrics were not just a performance, but also a monologue describing the horrors, pain, loneliness, and hopelessness inside. He was influenced by artists like XXXTentacion and Lil Peep during this period. These artists were artists who brought their dark and depressive themes to music. With their influence, Jarad did not feel alone. He wanted to be the voice of young people who were alienated from this society. His songs like All Girls Are the Same and Lucid Dream were listened to by millions of young people in a short time. His songs became anthems for young people suffering from depression, struggling for love, and not conforming to the rules of society. One of Juice WRLD's greatest talents was his incredible freestyle ability. He would spend hours, sometimes days, adding his own lyrics to music. A large part of his songs were the result of these freestyle sessions. He said of this ability, "Give me a beat and I'll tell you the story of my life." But every line of that story revealed a dark secret, drugs and a soul doomed to loneliness. Every word he said was like a wound bleeding from his heart. He didn't hide his addictions, but rather openly expressed them. He wrote lines like, "My hands are shaking, my heart is racing, I can't stop, I'm a slave to these drugs." It wasn't just a lyric, it was a cry for help. In the song Legends, he expressed his fear. He wrote this song after the death of his friend XXXTentacion, and in the song he said that he would not die at 27. These lines did not make sense to anyone at the time. However, it was a prediction that he would leave this world before he was 27. He said in many interviews, "I will not be the 27 club," but fate gave him less time. He was deeply affected by the young deaths of his friends, such as Juice WRLD, XXXTentacion, and Lil Peep. It seemed like he was exposing the hidden wounds inside everyone. It was December 8, 2019. His plane landed at the Chicago airport, but this was no ordinary landing. There were 70 pounds of marijuana and a bottle of codeine on board. When the FBI raided the plane, Juice WRLD was in a state of fear and panic. He was afraid of being arrested, so he made a brave decision. He swallowed all the drugs he had at once. He passed out shortly after, and he never woke up again. His last breath came as a result of a seizure caused by the drugs he had taken. Emergency services were able to help him, but it was too late. His decision to die by taking drugs rather than being arrested showed how deep his inner struggle was. He saw no other way out than death. He was not trying to end his life, but simply to be free. That was his mindset. He considered himself a slave to drugs and wanted to be free from this slavery. It was not just a physical addiction, but also a psychological one. He felt bad when he didn't take his medication because the medication helped him forget his inner emptiness, loneliness, and anxiety. With his death, his prediction came true. He did not join the 27-year-old club that he mentioned in the song Legends because he did not reach that age. He killed himself at a very young age, like a candle that burned at both ends and quickly went out. His music became the voice of millions of young people suffering from depression, anxiety, and loneliness. They found their stories in Juice WRLD's songs. His music gave them hope, a solace. He himself repeatedly advised his listeners to seek psychological help and stay away from drugs. But the saddest thing is that he was able to give hope to others, but could not help himself. He was only 21 years old. He released as much music as he could in his short life. He left us with deep pain, but his music will live forever. He will live as a legend, but will be remembered as a warning. Drugs are not a light to a dark path. They are just an illusion. This is not just a story about a musician, but also about the psychological problems, difficulties, addictions, and helplessness that modern youth face. He left us, but he taught us a lesson. Sometimes the brightest stars are born in the darkest night and go out in the shortest time, but their light burns forever. And now, are you ready to descend into that darkness? The scene of Juice WRLD's death was before everyone's eyes, but there were deeper and more terrible moments that remained in the shadow of this event. He wasn't just a victim of a drug overdose. He was trapped in a dark world of his own making, a world he'd created and portrayed in his music. This darkness would follow him until his last breath. Now was the time to lift the curtain of that darkness. Or maybe the fear and caution his fame brought prevented them from trying to save his life. That was the dark side of fame. Everyone wants to be there for you, but no one wants to fight your inner demons. Juice WRLD's inner world was a labyrinth. Even as he was succeeding, he was sinking deeper into it with every step he took. His producer and friend, who spoke about it, had tears in his eyes. Juice came to me one day and said, "Man, I feel like I'm not going to live much longer. There's something inside me that's eating me up." I tried to calm him down, but I knew everything he said was true. These words showed that Juice WRLD's fears about the future were not just a prediction, but a gut feeling. He listened to the warnings his body and soul were giving him. Juice WRLD's girlfriend, Alicia, was one of the people who suffered the most from his addiction. She saw the number of pills Juice took every day, and how he sank deeper and deeper with each passing day. Alicia had tried many times to convince him to go to treatment, but each time she had failed. Juice couldn't control himself. He was like he was on drugs, she said in an interview. But in this story, there are still unanswered questions. Was Juice WRLD's death simply a drug overdose, or was there a deeper, darker secret? And what were the hidden facts that came to light after his death, and what did they mean? Why didn't his friends and family try harder to save his life? Were the albums and songs that came out after his death a farewell letter that he wrote before his death? The answers to these questions are in the deepest and most secret part of the story. Alicia felt like every moment she spent with him could be her last. She said that Juice would scream in her sleep from the drugs, and she would have terrible dreams. Juice lived with nightmares every day. He wouldn't even sleep. The drugs would give him a break for a moment, but then the nightmares would come back, she said. This showed us how deeply troubled Juice WRLD's psychological state was. The lyrics in his music were not just a performance, but a battle with his inner demons. After Juice WRLD's death, his fans and experts took a closer look at his songs. The results were horrifying. A large part of his songs were a kind of farewell message. The lyrics in the song Legends, "What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21." Every word, every melody in his songs was a piece of the pain and darkness inside him. In the song Empty, he expressed how empty and meaningless he felt. "I'm feeling empty, I'm feeling nothing at all." The lyrics expressed how big the inner void was. Although he tried to fill this void with drugs, it was just an illusion. These songs of his were not just music, but also a confession to himself. He wanted to save us with his music, but he could not save himself. Mysterious details after his death. Some details that have emerged about Juice WRLD's death have increased suspicions that his death was not a simple incident. For example, the 70 pounds of marijuana and codeine found on his plane indicate that he was not just an individual user, but perhaps part of a larger drug ring. These facts have given rise to different opinions about the cause of his death. According to some theories, Juice WRLD had problems with drug dealers, which led to his death. Some people even said that he committed suicide because he chose death rather than arrest. This was evidence of how deeply troubled his inner state was. Juice WRLD saw himself as a player in a kind of dangerous game. He knew the rules of this game, but could not get out of their circle. He said in his music that he had everything, but he had nothing. This is just one of the biggest problems that modern artists face. They shine in the public eye, become famous, but when the cameras go off, they are left alone and helpless. Juice WRLD has become the brightest and saddest symbol of this terrible cycle. Summary and conclusion. Juice WRLD's life and death teach us many lessons. The words in his music are a part of his soul. He wanted to save us with his music, but he couldn't save himself. He left us, but he taught us a lesson. Sometimes the brightest stars are born on the darkest night and fade away in a short time, but their light lasts forever. This was no ordinary death. This was the moment when a prediction came true at the age of 21, and this wasn't the end of Juice WRLD's dark story. It was just the end of a chapter, and it was over. What we saw and what we didn't see. The incident on the plane was a symbol of Juice WRLD's loneliness and helplessness. He was a world-famous star, but he was left alone in his darkest hour. When federal agents raided the plane, he saw only one way out: surrender to drugs. This decision reveals how the people around him had brought him to this state. Why weren't his friends and team keeping him under such close surveillance? Maybe no one understood how bad his condition was. His death raised many questions. How could the whole world know about his addiction and no one help him? In one of his interviews, his girlfriend Alicia revealed that Juice WRLD took drugs at least 10 times a day. His family and friends were aware of his condition, but they could not do anything to help him. He did not want to go to treatment. He had locked himself in drugs. He said that drugs were his only refuge. He believed that these deaths were not a coincidence, that they also went down the same dark path. He saw himself as one of the young people who fell victim to this fate. Every day, every song he wrote, every drug he took, he was one step closer to his end. He said in an interview, "I am walking towards my death every day." Although these words were perceived as a philosophical and artistic statement at the time, they were actually an accurate description of his inner state. These lines clearly show what a living hell Juice WRLD's life was. He called himself a drug addict in his music, and this was not a metaphor but a bitter truth. Alicia's words were part of the drama behind this tragedy. She tried to help, but she couldn't. Juice's internal struggle was even stronger than the outside world. Although Juice WRLD talked about addiction in his music, he also wrote about love and relationships. He openly expressed the difficulties he experienced in romantic relationships, moments of fear, betrayal, and heartbreak. The song Bandit is one of his songs that describes the feelings of a person facing betrayal. These songs resonated with young listeners, songs that they found themselves in. What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21. What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21. What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21. Show us how accurate his prediction was. But was it just a coincidence? Perhaps Juice WRLD had accepted his dark end. Perhaps he was tired of living in this world. These words came to him after his death, as if from a prophet. He had not seen the future. He had only known his end. This was the mysterious and eerie aspect of his music. His music often touched on car crashes, gunshots, and violent themes. This indicated how tense and dangerous his life was. Even when he was shining on stage, he always felt like there was a threat lurking behind him. The dark side of fame. Juice WRLD's story shines a light on the dark side of fame and the art world. Despite having money, fame, and millions of fans, he couldn't fill the void inside. His story is not just the tragedy of one musician, but also the story of millions of people struggling with depression, addiction, and psychological problems. He showed us that even the greatest successes cannot fill the void inside. His music still lives on today, but his biggest message to young people is this: don't be afraid to ask for help. You are not alone. Juice WRLD has lost his life, but his music continues to help people.